Wang Cheng is from Strange Stories from a Chinese studio, Liaozhai Studio. This story recounts the peculiar tale of a prodigal named Wang Cheng, who fails in his business endeavors, but gains wealth through a mysterious incident involving quail fighting. It is said that Wang Cheng was originally from a family of former officials in Pingyuan County. He was lazy by nature, and his life grew increasingly unstable. Eventually, he was left with only a few dilapidated houses, and he and his wife slept on tattered straw mats, constantly bickering and struggling to make ends meet. During the scorching summer, there was a ruined garden belonging to the Zhou family outside the village, with only a pavilion remaining. Many people from the village came to stay and cool off in the pavilion, and Wang Cheng was among them. One day, after sunrise, everyone who had been sleeping there had left. The sun had already risen quite high when Wang Cheng finally got up, feeling unsteady as he contemplated heading home. Suddenly, he noticed a golden hairpin in the grass. He picked it up and saw the small characters made by the Yibin mansion engraved on it. Wang Cheng's grandfather had been an official at the Yibin mansion, and many of the family's heirlooms had similar designs. Therefore, Wang Cheng hesitated before taking the hairpin. At that moment, an old woman came looking for the hairpin. Despite being poor, Wang Cheng was honest and quickly handed it over to her. The old woman was delighted and praised Wang Cheng's character. She said, "The hairpin is not worth much money, but it was a belonging of my late husband." Wang Cheng asked, "Who is your husband?" The old woman replied, "He was the late Yibin official, Wang Jianzi." To Wang Cheng's surprise, he exclaimed, "That's my grandfather. How do you know him?" The old woman was equally astonished, and said, "Are you Wang Jianzi's grandson? I am a fox spirit, 100 years ago, was close with your grandfather. After his passing, I went into seclusion. Today, passing by here I lost the hairpin, which you happened to find. Isn't this fate arranged by the heavens?" Wang Cheng had heard stories of his grandfather's fox wife, so he believed the old woman. He invited her to his home, and she accepted. When he introduced her to his wife, they found her dressed in rags and looking thin and sickly. The old woman sighed, "Ah, Wang Jianzi's grandson has fallen into such poverty." Seeing their broken pots and pans without a trace of smoke, the old woman said, "With such conditions, how can you sustain yourselves?" Wang Cheng's wife explained their dire situation in tears. The old woman handed the hairpin to Wang Cheng's wife and instructed her to use it to buy rice temporarily, then return in 3 days. Wang Cheng tried to detain her, but she said, "As a wife, you can't even provide for yourself. If I stay here, you'll be left gazing at the roof, helpless. What use would that be?" With that, she left. Wang Cheng told his wife about the old woman's origin, and she was frightened. Wang Cheng praised her virtues and urged her to serve the old woman as if she were a mother-in-law. His wife agreed. 3 days later, the old woman returned, giving Wang Cheng some silver to buy 1 stone of rice and 1 stone of noodles. She spent the night with Wang Cheng's wife on a short bed. While initially fearful, his wife found the old woman sincere, and her suspicions subsided. The next day, the old woman advised Wang Cheng not to be lazy and suggested he engage in small business ventures. She argued that relying on charity wouldn't be sustainable. Wang Cheng mentioned his lack of capital. The old woman disclosed that she had saved 40 taels of silver for cosmetics, which she had accumulated over time. Since she had no use for it, she advised Wang Cheng to use it to buy hemp cloth, go to the capital immediately, and sell it for a profit. Wang Cheng followed her advice, buying over 50 rolls of hemp cloth and returning home. The old woman urged him to quickly pack and head to the capital within 6 or 7 days. She cautioned him, "Work diligently, don't be lazy. Be swift, not slow. Regret will be too late if you arrive a day late." Wang Cheng humbly agreed, carrying his merchandise on his journey. However, he encountered heavy rain on the way, and his clothes and shoes became thoroughly soaked. Unaccustomed to hardships, he grew exhausted and decided to rest at an inn. Unforeseen, a heavy rain poured through the night, causing water to stream like ropes from the eaves. The next morning, the road was muddier and more treacherous. Wang Cheng observed others wading through water up to their ankles and hesitated, fearing the hardships ahead. By noon, the rain finally ceased, but it soon resumed, forcing Wang Cheng to spend another night at the inn. Rainwater continued to accumulate on the path, making it impassable. Exhausted from the journey, Wang Cheng felt disheartened. As he neared the capital, he heard that hemp cloth prices had soared, which buoyed his spirits. Upon arriving, he checked into an inn, only to learn that he was too late. The recently opened southern route had brought limited hemp cloth to the capital. The Beale mansion urgently bought the cloth, causing prices to triple. Unfortunately, the cloth had been bought in full just the previous day, leaving no opportunity for those who arrived afterward. Innkeepers lamented that Wang Cheng's tardiness cost him a favorable deal. Afterward, more shipments of hemp cloth arrived, and prices dropped further. Wang Cheng, having made no profit, hesitated to sell. He delayed for more than 10 days, incurring expenses and growing increasingly distressed. The innkeeper advised him to sell the cloth at a lower price and switch to a different business. Reluctantly, Wang Cheng complied, losing over 10 taels of silver as he sold off the cloth. The next morning, when he was ready to return, he found that all his silver was gone. Anxious, he told the innkeeper, who was unable to help. Some suggested that he report to the authorities and demand compensation from the innkeeper. Wang Cheng sighed. "This must be my fate. The innkeeper isn't to blame." Grateful for his understanding, the innkeeper gave him 5 taels of silver and encouraged him to head back. Wang Cheng struggled with the idea of returning home, ashamed to face his grandmother. He deliberated within himself, torn between his options. One day, Wang Cheng happened to see quail fights where people were betting thousands of coins. Each quail purchased cost more than 100 coins. A thought crossed his mind, and he calculated the money he had left. It was just enough to buy quails for trading, so he decided to discuss it with the innkeeper. The innkeeper encouraged him strongly and arranged for him to stay at the inn, providing meals for free. Wang Cheng was delighted and set off on his journey. He bought a cartload of quails and returned to the capital. The innkeeper was pleased and wished him luck in selling them quickly. However, that night, heavy rain fell until dawn. By morning, the streets were flooded, and the rain showed no sign of stopping. Wang Cheng had no choice but to stay at the inn and wait for the weather to clear. But the rain persisted for several days without a break. Looking at the cages, he saw that many quails had died. Fearing the worst, he didn't know what to do. Another day passed, and more quails died. Only a few remained, which he combined into one cage. After another night, only one quail was left alive. Wang Cheng told the innkeeper, his eyes brimming with tears. The innkeeper also sighed in sympathy. Feeling that he had lost all his silver and had nowhere to go, Wang Cheng contemplated ending his life. The innkeeper tried to console him and suggested they take a look at the surviving quail. The innkeeper scrutinized it and said, "This quail seems extraordinary. The ones that died might have been defeated by it. Since you have some free time now, why not train it? If it's a good specimen, you could use it for betting and make a living." Wang Cheng followed the innkeeper's advice. After training, the innkeeper told him to take the quail to the streets and bet on it to win meals and drinks. This quail was remarkably strong, and won several times. The innkeeper was delighted and rewarded Wang Cheng with some silver. He advised Wang Cheng to gamble with wealthy youngsters, and Wang Cheng's quail continued to win. After over half a year, Wang Cheng had saved up 20 taels of silver. He began to feel relieved, regarding the quail as his lifeline. Initially, a prince had a prize quail, and every lantern festival, he invited those who raised quails to his palace for fights. The innkeeper told Wang Cheng, "Getting rich now seems easy. What's uncertain is your luck. The innkeeper shared details of the prince's quail fights and accompanied Wang Cheng to the palace, providing instructions: if you lose, accept the defeat gracefully. If, by any chance, you win, the prince will undoubtedly want to buy your quail. Don't agree immediately. If he insists, look at me for guidance before responding. Upon reaching the palace, they found a crowd gathered on the steps. Before long, the prince emerged from the hall, and his attendants announced, "Those who wish to participate, step forward." Someone stepped forward with a quail. The prince released his quail, and the guests released theirs. However, before the fight even began, the guest's quail was defeated, and the prince laughed heartily. In no time, several participants lost consecutively. The innkeeper said, "It's time." Wang Cheng and the innkeeper stepped forward. The prince carefully examined Wang Cheng's quail and remarked, "There's a fierceness in its eyes, a bird skilled in combat. Do not underestimate it." He called for another quail named Iron Beak to face off. After an intense battle, the prince's quail was defeated. More quails were brought in, but each time they were replaced, they were defeated one after another. The prince finally ordered his palace's prized jade quail. When it appeared, it was pure white, like an egret, and extraordinarily beautiful. Wang Cheng became fearful and knelt down, pleading, "The prince's quail is divine. I'm afraid of harming my own bird and ruining my livelihood." The prince chuckled, "Release it. If your quail dies, I will compensate you generously." Only then did Wang Cheng release his quail, and the prince's jade quail rushed forward. Wang Cheng's quail suddenly soared into the air, attacking like a divine crane. The two quails flew and fought, and the jade quail gradually weakened. Wang Cheng's quail grew more spirited, fierce, and relentless. In no time, the white feathers of the jade quail were pecked off, and it fled with drooping wings. The crowd of onlookers marveled at Wang Cheng's quail. The prince took the quail in his hands, inspecting it closely from beak to claws. He asked Wang Cheng, "Are you willing to sell this quail?" Wang Cheng replied, "This humble person has no other means of support. I depend on this quail for my livelihood, and I'm reluctant to part with it." The prince offered a generous price, saying that it could bring wealth equivalent to that of an average family. Wang Cheng pondered for a while, then said, "I was initially unwilling to sell, but since your highness has such affection for it, if it can grant me a life without worries, what more could I ask for?" The prince inquired about the price, and Wang Cheng answered, 1,000 taels of silver. The prince laughed, "You're quite the fool. What treasure could possibly be worth 1,000 taels of silver?" Wang Cheng replied, "Your highness might not view it as a treasure, but in my eyes, it's worth more than any priceless gem." The prince asked why, and Wang Cheng explained, "With this quail, I can gamble and win a few taels of silver each time. When converted to rice, it feeds a family of over 10 people, ensuring we won't go hungry or cold. What treasure can compare to that?" The prince said, "I won't mistreat you. I'll offer you 200 taels of silver." Wang Cheng shook his head. The prince added another 100. Wang Cheng glanced at the innkeeper, who remained unfazed. Wang Cheng then said, "Thank you, your highness. I'm willing to lower the price. I'll sell it for 900 taels of silver." The prince retorted, "Who would exchange 900 taels of silver for a single quail?" Wang Cheng started to pack up the quail, ready to leave. The prince hurriedly called out, "The quail's owner, come back. The quail's owner, come back. I'll indeed give you 600 taels of silver for it. If you're willing to sell, fine. If not, forget it." Wang Cheng looked at the innkeeper again, who showed no change in expression. Filled with contentment, Wang Cheng feared losing this opportunity, and said, "I'll accept this price from your highness, even though I'm not entirely willing. But considering I've been bargaining for a while and may not be able to secure a better deal, I'll go along with your highness's offer." The prince was pleased, and promptly weighed out the silver for him. Wang Cheng packed up the silver and thanked the prince before leaving. The innkeeper chided him, "What did I say? You were too hasty in deciding on your own." If you lowered the price again, you could have walked away with 800 taels of silver. When Wang Cheng returned home, he placed the silver on the table, inviting the innkeeper to take it. The innkeeper declined. Wang Cheng insisted several times, and the innkeeper finally accepted the meal expenses. Wang Cheng returned home and recounted his experiences to everyone, sharing the silver for their joy. The old woman advised him to buy 300 acres of fertile land, build a house, and furnish it. Gradually, their family regained the grandeur of their ancestors. Every morning, the old woman rose early, urging Wang Cheng to supervise the workers in the fields, while his wife managed the household's textile production. At the slightest hint of laziness, the old woman scolded them. The couple diligently followed their roles, without a trace of complaint. After 3 years, their wealth had multiplied, and the old woman decided to leave. The couple begged her to stay, shedding tears of sadness. Yet, the next morning, when they went to greet her, the old woman had disappeared without a trace. The historian, Yi Shishi, remarks that wealth and success are achieved through hard work. But Wang Cheng's case was a rare instance of acquiring fortune through laziness. Nonetheless, it should be noted that Wang Cheng's saying, "Poverty cannot be moved," explains why he was initially abandoned by fate, but later protected by it. True wealth cannot be gained through laziness.
Alright, this story has come to an end. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you.